Welcome to U.S. Daily News YouTube channel. Ukraine accelerated its offensive operations outside the front lines. This critical step of Kiev increased the fear in the Russian army and the Kremlin administration. Ukrainian armed forces attacked many key points, including oil refineries and train sabotage. These attacks are aimed at targeting the Russian army's supply chains. The attacks are also seen as part of their preparation for the spring offensive. As it is known, the war in Ukraine proceeds in two directions, east and south. While the fortress city in Bakhmut holds the eastern direction, Zaporizhzhia stands out in the south. It's only a matter of time before Kiev starts to counterattack. Knowing this risk, Russia takes precautions by going on the defensive. Russia has ordered the evacuation of families with children and the elderly from the Russian-controlled frontline areas in the south of Ukraine due to increased bombardment. The head of the Zaporizhzhia region, appointed by Russia, Yevgeny Balitsky, announced a temporary evacuation of 18 places, including the town of Energodar, where the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is located. Yevgeny Balitsky expressed that evacuation is necessary to strengthen security amid the increase in Ukrainian attacks. Balitsky added that after evacuation, children can stay at school and that evacuees will receive housing, food, and lump sum payments. The evacuations are the last step Russian authorities took to consolidate their control over Ukraine's occupied territories prior to the attack. Authorities are also forcing residents to obtain Russian passports. Fearing Ukraine's impending attack, Russian authorities resort to evacuation orders. This is something we are not familiar with. Russian authorities had evacuated civilians from the city of Kherson before Moscow forces withdrew from the city last year. The War Research Institute, a Washington-based think tank, said the evacuation of civilians from frontline areas was also likely designed to pave the way for a controlled withdrawal of Russian troops. Also last month, a Ukrainian official stated that thousands of Russians fled Crimea. The official said that Russians had abandoned their properties, fearing that a counterattack expected in the spring might target the Black Sea Peninsula. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief representative in Crimea, Tamila Taseva, said on national television that the Russians were beginning to worry about Ukraine's effort to retake the region. About 500,000 to 800,000 Russians currently live in Crimea illegally. Russians may be forcibly deported in accordance with Ukrainian legislation and international legal norms. Fearing this possibility, Russian citizens sell their properties and leave Crimea. The Russian evacuation of Crimea is also seen in the real estate market. It's not possible to say the exact number by looking at the real estate market, but there are many who leave. In November, Emil Ibragimov, head of the Crimean project and education platform QHub, said that the Russians fled from Crimea to the neighboring Russian region of Krasnodar, fearing that Ukraine would eventually liberate the Russian Black Sea Peninsula. On the other hand, it turned out that the Russian administrations in Crimea prepared evacuation plans for their employees. Russian authorities on the peninsula are making a list of workers and their families who are subject to priority evacuation. In fact, it is among the information that escape plans have already been created and approved in some cities. It was announced that such a plan was being prepared in the northern part of the peninsula, close to the Ukrainian mainland, in the town of Krasnoperekopsk. When we look back on the past, it's possible to discover a common point. The first precaution taken by the Russian administration, which is afraid of the Ukrainian attack, is to evacuate the cities. So what awaits Russia? Vladimir Putin's strategy has always been based on pinning his opponents against each other. By holding a divided house, Putin prevented them from uniting and usurping it. However, since he started the war in Ukraine, Putin may have overplayed his hand in a high-stakes game that could cost him his presidency, if not his life. For more than 2 decades, Putin has successfully pitted different factions of his potential rivals. Russian army against Russian intelligence. Different factions within Russia's elite are against each other. Now, private military companies like the Wagner Group against the regular Russian army. The critical flaw in Putin's strategy was that he thought he had created a political perpetual motion machine that would keep him and his regime in power forever. But the Russian leader's plans are now faltering, and he doesn't seem to realize it, because, like most dictators, he has an Achilles heel. This is his own arrogance. Vladimir Putin's pride has been blinded by the failures of his war, the rising discontent in the ranks of his army, and the unspoken anger of the Moscow elite. Putin, like other leaders who have been hit by unexpected blows in the past, has yet to realize that he is only beneficial to the elite and society as a whole so long as he can meet their needs and demands. For years, it was considered that Putin provided stability after the chaos in Russia of the 1990s. Now the president has become the epicenter of Russia's 21st century chaos. Putin is not running a reclusive country completely cut off from the outside world like North Korea. Rather, it facilitates the rise of dozens of billionaires, many of whom now own private military companies, who see the reality of Russia's position in the world and who have both the means and the motivation to end the House of Putin. Putin will not live forever. Many Russians now find it unreasonable to pull all their chips on a 70-year-old man whose health condition is a constant source of rumors. Many of Putin's favorites who have survived for years at the whim of their bosses will undoubtedly lose everything when he's no longer there. To prevent this and ensure their survival, they must start forming alliances. It is also a bitter truth that as long as Putin is behind the wheel of Russia, his ill-fated adventure in Ukraine is on the brink of an abyss. Russia has no road ahead, and there is no turning back at this point. Now wanted for war crimes, Putin has become a heavy albatross on the necks of the Russian elite. Russia will not be able to get out of its current economic crisis or return to normal until the war in Ukraine is over. Putin's strategy of allowing and even encouraging open disagreements among his subordinates can be deadly. The most obvious example of these disagreements is between Wagner Group leader Prigozhin and the defense minister Sergei Shoigu, but the continued loyalty of his subordinates prevents the military elite from uniting against him. As the war continues to plunge Russia's economy and long-term stability into the abyss, public opinion supporting Putin today may sympathize with the arguments put forward by a figure like Prigozhin. History has shown that ordinary people will often support the harsh speeches of a populist figure like Prigozhin, who put the blame for the invasion of Ukraine on Shoigu's feet. The plot that the Kremlin did not foresee is where people stand and people's thoughts on who should be responsible for Russia's military and economic defeat. If Prigozhin feels his life is in danger, he may choose to forge alliances with other disgruntled oligarchs to go against Putin's interests. Prigozhin's recent jovial meeting with his known rival, the Chechen dictator Ramazan Kadyrov, is proof that politics makes strange bedfellows. But it's also a testament on how he plays politics if he wants to secure someone's future. In the end, it is quite possible that the Prigozhin and Shoigu duo will not survive the post-Putin era. Those who want to win the favor of the West, melt billions of dollars and end this conflict before it has even more dire consequences for Russia, are probably already looking for the Messiah who will start the post-Putin era. They realize that now is the time to avoid the fuss and make the deals they need to see tomorrow's sunrise. The big game of who will come after Putin has already begun. There are undoubtedly many smart people in Moscow who know that Putin's day will come, and they must be on the right side of history. The Kremlin allows their presence to continue. Ordinary citizens are the least priority. A wise politician will know how to transcend the waves of emotion in order to gain the power that is now in Putin's hands. How might the breaking point in the front lines affect Russia in the coming days? State your ideas in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like our videos. Thanks for watching.